You're listening to Police Life, The Experts, a Victoria Police podcast shining a light on our people and their extraordinary skills.
This podcast episode contains strong language. Listener discretion is advised. Conversations captured by telephone intercepts have been recreated in this episode by voice actors. In 2018, Victoria Police's Echo Taskforce was looking at the state's biggest outlaw motorcycle gang, the Rebels. Detectives identified a chink in the gang's armour, a high-ranking office bearer of the club who believed he was untouchable.
We want it done tonight.
Yeah, mate, as I said, yeah.
You need another car, not in my street, outside my street.
Yeah, I know. I've got it all planned. It's all hooked up, bro.
You got to cover yourself too.
Matthew Bruce always wanted to be a somebody, a big man in his suburb. That's why he joined the Rebels outlaw motorcycle gang. His outlaw patch turned him from a minor criminal into a serious violent offender, a menace to the community, a judge would later say. However, Matthew Bruce's career as a gangster was brief, ending in February 2019 in the back of an ambulance, beaten and bruised by criminal associates, his empire in ruins.
We followed that ambulance from where he was to the Sunshine Hospital. Unbeknownst to Matthew or the ambulance crew, as that rear door opened, he was sitting there on his phone, injured, feeling sore and sorry for himself. And then as soon as the doors opened, we grabbed him and took that phone. And he was shocked. That look on his face was utter shock, but it was nothing compared to what was about to come in the days afterwards and the months later when that brief of evidence was served on him. He maintained that persona of, I'm Matt Tats, as he called himself. I'm a Rebels bikie. You've got nothing on me. He was about to become aware of exactly how much we knew, what we discovered, and that he was set for a significant period of imprisonment. My name is Justin Merkovich. I'm a Detective Senior Sergeant with Victoria Police, having joined Victoria Police in 2006. And I'm currently the officer in charge of a work unit known as the Eastern Region Crime Squad. For this investigation, I was a detective sergeant at the Victoria Police Crime Command at a work unit known as the Echo Taskforce, which is tasked with the investigation of outlaw motorcycle gang and organised crime gangs within Victoria.
6 months earlier, Matt Tats was riding high. He wanted the Echo Taskforce to know who he was. To Bruce, being a high-value target was a status symbol. Attracting the attention of the task force was not a wise career move. Ashley Ryan is one of the bosses of the Echo Taskforce.
So my name's Detective Senior Sergeant Ashley Ryan, and I'm at the Echo Taskforce with Victoria Police. Echo Taskforce commenced in late January 2011, and the aim was to identify, prevent, detect and disrupt illegal activity by all IMCG members within Victoria. Echo Taskforce focuses on a number of different things to achieve that disruption and the increasing a level of IMCG compliance across a broad spectrum of areas. But that's not only the crime aspect of it, but it's also by enforcement and disruption in particular. The idea is to improve public safety, increase community confidence, which is really important as far as the Victoria Police is concerned. But it's to actively engage OMCGs in all activities, but that can include licensing, road runs and events, and public order matters as well, for instance, parties or other types of gatherings as well. The idea specifically is to create a hostile environment for the OMCGs or the outlaw motorcycle gangs to operate within Victoria. So the outlaw motorcycle gangs are deemed to be what we look at as criminal organisations, and they operate at the highest level as far as crimes in particular. They're transnational organisations that operate around the world, and we're talking about drug trafficking, extortions, serious assaults, even to the offence of murder as well that are investigated. So the impact of the crimes committed by outlaw motorcycle gangs are at the highest end. So I've been at Echo since December 2019, and my role specifically at Echo is to manage 3 crews that target and police specific outlaw motorcycle gangs and their criminal offending. And the level of drug trafficking, alleged drug trafficking that these gangs are involved in, and the level of offending is ever increasing. So that's what we need to be mindful of in this ever-shifting landscape within the outlaw motorcycle gangs. So not only do they evolve, but we need to evolve with that to ensure that we're able to effectively police these groups.
Ashley, Justin and the rest of the Echo Taskforce were taking a good look at the increasing offending related to the rebels.
So any organisation, any criminal organisation is going to have those weaker points that you can target. Using what you can to identify that little gap that you can move through and then open up a wider piece of the puzzle.
Matthew Bruce was that weak point for Echo. He was a man in a hurry. Prior to becoming a bikie, Bruce's criminal offending was unremarkable, a history of mostly minor thefts and violence. That changed after he became a fully patched Rebels member in early 2015. He used the Rebels brand to graduate to serious organised and violent crime by 2018.
When we first met him, he thought he was so important. He thought we knew who he was. He thought that we were looking at him so hard, as he put it. But the reality was that wasn't the case. But if he did think that he was of such importance to us, you would have thought that he would be a little bit more attuned to what he was doing and how he was going about it.
Bruce was a prolific but careless offender, a suspect in several violent crimes, but he had so far avoided charges. He now had the full attention of Echo's investigators, who take a multifaceted approach to bring down bikie offenders.
The reason why the Echo Taskforce is successful is that you don't focus on one singular investigative tactic to try and eliminate or disrupt the offenders, whether it's traffic and road policing enforcement one day, whether it's liquor licensing enforcement the next, or it's an investigation to target an individual within a gang to try and disrupt their influence in the gang or the gang as a whole, and bring all those different parts together as a way to continually put pressure on the criminal activities of these gangs.
This was a violent era with tensions between rival clubs in Victoria breaking out into public violence. The Echo Taskforce had its hands full investigating unsolved shootings and arson attacks, which were thought to be connected to the rebels.
At the same time this happened, Victoria Police were also investigating a drive-by shooting at the house of the former president of the Finks outlaw motorcycle gang, Brent Recker. Brent Recker was a very well-known outlaw motorcycle figure across Australia. He had moved from Western Australia to Victoria and taken up a position as an office bearer within the Finks in Victoria and had commenced a new chapter down south. He lived in Frankston with his partner and young child.
Underworld figures fear an all-out bikie war is about to erupt after the Finks' boss's home was targeted in a drive-by shooting while his wife and 11-day-old baby slept inside. Brent James Recker's home in Frankston, in Melbourne's southeast, was sprayed with bullets and a car firebombed about 4:40am Thursday.
At least one of those rounds missed Recker's house and went through the property at the neighbouring address. Inside that house was a young family and a young baby, and a bullet went through the window and through the bedroom where that child was sleeping. So that investigation from the early stages was looking at other outlaw motorcycle gangs that may be involved in that offending. And it was very quickly identified that the most likely culprits for that were the Rebels outlaw motorcycle gang, who had an ongoing and well-known dispute with the Finks and Brent Recker in particular. So Matthew Bruce was considered and identified as a person of interest in that investigation. So whilst trying to gather evidence in relation to that investigation, we were also trying to disrupt the activities of Matthew Bruce and what he was doing for his own syndicate, using his own people for his own benefit in the Melton area.
Public safety is the highest priority, so Echo's first move was to remove Matthew Bruce's access to firearms.
So Matthew Bruce was identified by a member from the team, very diligent member of the team, who identified him as a suitable candidate for the firearms prohibition order. Firearms prohibition order legislation was introduced in 2018. It gave police the ability to make an application to the Chief Commissioner or a delegate to apply for a firearms prohibition order which restricted a person's access to firearms firearms-related parts, and also who they could be present with or where they could be present with firearms. When we arrived at the house and served the FPO on Bruce, he was almost happy to see us. He gave the impression of someone who had been waiting for this and probably saw it as a bit of a badge of honour that the Echo Taskforce were there talking to him at that point. And he openly said to us at the time, "I've been waiting for you to come around. I know I'm of high importance to you and the Echo Taskforce." So Matthew Bruce was a member of what's called the Melbourne chapter, which is actually based in Sunshine, but it is the in-charge chapter of the rebels throughout Victoria. Matthew Bruce informed us that he had taken a break from the club for a period of time, but he also informed us that he was the Sergeant-at-Arms of the Rebels Melbourne chapter, and that was a bit of a shock to us at the time. What was also surprising was that someone would volunteer that information to police. For a lot of members in outlaw motorcycle gangs, they won't identify their position as an office bearer within the club through fear that it will put extra attention on them from authorities. Matthew Bruce was almost excited to inform us that he was the Melbourne chapter Sergeant-at-Arms. So the Sergeant-at-Arms is an important role. They're an enforcer within the club. They are responsible for internal discipline within the club. If there's a dispute with another club, if there's an issue in relation to discipline internally within the club, the Sergeant-at-Arms is a person who will take responsibility for that.
As Sergeant-at-Arms, Matthew Bruce was also responsible for maintaining the club's brand, the propensity for violence that is central to the business model of every outlaw motorcycle gang.
Fear is the absolute main commodity that they rely upon to operate how they operate. And they use that fear through their size, through their clothing, through their branding, through the very fact that they are a group of people with a singular purpose to try and instill fear on the community.
Matthew Bruce was an unremarkable crook. To be successful, he needed the threat of the rebels behind him.
He had a HSV Commodore with personalised plates on it, FEARD, F-E-A-R-D. He wanted the people that he dealt with to know that he was a member of the rebels and that he was someone to be feared. He had a number of facial tattoos, and he referred to himself as Matt Tats. So people weren't confused, they knew who Matt Tats was. If he was seeking a debt or he was trying to deal with an issue, he would remind people who he was and what his position within the rebels was. He believed that he was untouchable. I remember one time, shortly after we served the FPO on him, he actually rang me to tell me that he had a new phone number, which was an interesting move, but he believed that he was that important to the Echo Taskforce.
Justin Merkovich's boss, Ashley Ryan, knew Matthew Bruce before his rise to infamy in Melton.
I was previously at Melton Crime Investigation Unit, where I had a previous involvement and dealings with Matthew, and I can say that Matthew was always respectful, and he was never an issue to really deal with. And it really does go to show that although they do communicate with you, they're still capable of committing some really serious crimes. And what we've seen with Matthew was that the crimes were really high level, were really violent, and the weapons that were being used and the drugs that were being trafficked were at the higher end.
He acted one way with police, but another way entirely with those caught up in his crimes. Despite his reputation, Matthew Bruce's Rebels membership had not delivered him the riches he'd hoped for. He'd even considered getting out of the club.
Spoken to a lot of outlaw motorcycle gang members over the years, many of them very senior members who have almost been in tears asking for help to get out, because what they joined, what they thought they were joining, ended up being very different. So they get given the glossy brochure at the start, money, power, drugs, girls, whatever it may be, and when they join, they realise that it's actually not. It's not that. The people at the top, it's like a pyramid scheme. Those at the top of the tree of the club, they are doing well. They're financially well off. But the people below them who do the grunt work, who are the ones committing the offences, who are the ones working on behalf of those at the top of the tree, don't receive the same benefits. And they end up in custody or out of the club and in fear for their life because they've left on bad circumstances. And despite his high level of rank within the club, Matthew Bruce wasn't living a luxurious life. He didn't have a lot of money. So he had to, on the side, run his own enterprise, ruined a lot of lives in the process of those closest to him in order to achieve that. We weren't expecting it to play out the way it did, but once we scratched the surface of who Matthew Bruce was and we realised that we were dealing with someone who was actually involved in significant criminality in and around that Melton area, and that there was a significant amount of violent crime that was going unreported and that was occurring in the community, and the centrepiece to that crime was Matthew Bruce. There's a number of non-fatal shootings in and around the Melton area where shortly after those incidents, Matthew Bruce arrived at the scene to assist the victims, who were people that he knew. There was a common denominator in a lot of those investigations, which was Matthew Bruce. They were either associates of his or enemies of his, and they had been targeted.
Much of this violence was related to Bruce's trafficking of methamphetamine, cannabis and prescription drugs. The 34-year-old bikie regarded Melton as his turf.
Melton is a suburb out in the western suburbs of Victoria. It's densely populated. It's more affordable housing, so a lot of new residents to Victoria moved to Melton and its surrounds. Matthew Bruce lived in Melton with his partner, Kirsty Shields. They had one child together, and Kirsty had a number of children, and Matthew Bruce also had a number of children, previous partners. Matthew Bruce, he did what was best for Matthew Bruce at all times. So he had a relationship with Kirsty Shields, who was a very big supporter of his and would work for him and do whatever he asked. Unbeknownst to Kirsty, he was in a relationship with her sister, Jessica Shields, at the same time. So we were hearing this in the background. He would say that he was somewhere else and he was with Jessica. And Jessica was also offending on his behalf. In terms of Matthew Bruce's connection to the Melton community, he had resided there for a long time. He had a twin sister who also lived in the area and a number of associates who lived in and around Melton. That was his primary operating ground, and information was coming through to us that people were scared of Matthew Bruce. He had no fear of the local community or the police, and he believed that he sat at the top of the tree in that Melton area. He would deal with matters himself in terms of by recruiting other people to do his dirty work for him. And he didn't hesitate to bring in those closest to him, his loved ones and his family, to work on his behalf.
This work included delivering drugs, collecting cash and helping Bruce to sell illegal firearms.
We started to put the pieces of the puzzle together. We could see the level of violence and the level of criminality that he was involved in. So it was important for us to disrupt it quickly, to protect the community.
The focus on Matthew Bruce continued through Christmas 2018 and into the new year. It had begun with serving a firearms prohibition order on him and would take Justin Merkovich's crew much deeper into the Rebels gang.
Matthew Bruce is charged in relation to some items that are found at his house, and he's charged with trafficking cannabis and some other minor offences. And then we commenced this larger investigation called Operation Polar, which was aimed to investigate the activities of Matthew Bruce with a secondary focus of continuing to disrupt the activities of the Rebels Outlaw Motorcycle Gang.
So in January 2019, police began to lawfully intercept Bruce's phone calls. That phone tap was a treasure trove of evidence on his cannabis dealings.
What was the price of the green? Is it the same yet?
You gave me $1,800 last time, that would be $900. I got a little bit of that left. Tomorrow I will have a pound of better stuff that will be $950. In 4 weeks I should have 100 pounds of grouse shit.
Illegal prescription drugs like Valium.
He's in Collingwood now making another sale for you.
Who are the valleys for?
I gave Amanda one though.
I gave her 3 last night with a bit of bud.
His methamphetamine business.
Try and get a few bag sales, please. Try and get me a couple. I've got like fucking 14 bags I need to get rid of. I've got a kilo coming in myself this week, and so I've got to get rid of these so I can get that kilo.
And illegal firearms, including assault rifles.
It's starting to fucking piss me off. I need to fucking sell that fucking machine gun. Did that guy want it or not?
From the first day, it became evident how wide and how significant Matthew Bruce's offending was. He was openly trafficking methamphetamine over the phones. He was talking about crimes of violence. We were able to identify a number of suppliers to him of who he was buying his drugs from. We were able to identify that he was recruiting family members. He was not sophisticated in the code that he used. It was not difficult to decipher any code. He was openly talking about the offending. He openly spoke about hurting people, about torturing people, about possession of firearms and the trafficking of drugs.
Echo had many different offences to choose from, but Bruce's trade in illegal firearms was the highest priority.
I'm not 100% sure if it's an AK, as it's got a custom stock on it. It's either an AK, M4, SKS, all right? They all shoot the same round, which is an AK round.
An AK-47, as most people would have seen it in the movies, a semi-automatic or a modified firearm to be automatic firearm that can discharge a significant number of rounds in a very short period of time. Very high power firearm, absolutely no reason for anyone to need to possess that firearm, and of great concern to us. The knowledge that obviously we had at the time was that the firearm used to shoot Brent Recker's property in Frankston was identified to be an assault rifle with large calibre 7.62 ammunition. The level of damage that firearm could cause to the community is significant, and once we identify that Bruce has that firearm, recovering that firearm and getting it out of the hands of Bruce and his associates becomes a key priority.
On January 27, 2019, police listened to Bruce negotiating the sale of his assault rifle. He was using his twin sister Sarah to market the firearm to potential buyers.
Did you ask the guy if he wants that thing or not?
Yeah.
I've got over 380 rounds of it. If he buys the thing, he can have all the rounds, and if he needs more, then I've got to find out the price when he needs more. 380 rounds are going to last a long time. There's probably about 600, 700 rounds, to be honest with you, all up. I want 27,500 for it.
You told me 25 the other night.
That was with fuck all rounds. I can get 35 for it, Sarah, if I wait a week. He can even come to watch a video on her phone when it's clearer.
Community safety and protecting the community is that number one priority. So we commence work on identifying where Matthew Bruce is storing those firearms and our ability to seize those firearms and take those firearms off the street.
The next day, Bruce and his partner Kirsty Shields discuss a place to test fire the assault rifle and film a video to help attract a buyer. They choose Wombat State Forest, a popular tourist destination 50 kilometres west of Melbourne.
Do you reckon you could take me back out to Wombat today?
Why?
Because I want to put that thing back in place and I want to try it properly before I go whinging to the...
Does no one want to buy it?
Someone will probably buy it, but I don't want it coming back on my ass.
Do you want to go and play with Daddy's gun?
Hey,
I'm talking to Aubrey.
what are you saying?
I said, do you want to go and play with Daddy's gun?
If you're going to Bunnings, can you get me some earplugs?
Yeah, I'll get her some too.
It's going to be loud.
I wonder what she'll be like hearing it.
I want to make it work on full auto, and this time I want you to record the whole fucking thing.
Investigators would later find the video Kirsty recorded of Bruce firing the assault rifle.
Matthew Bruce with a cigarette in his mouth. There's a guitar case on the floor, like something out of the movies. He then discharges the firearm, and the power of that firearm knocks him off balance. He almost falls over. The video is filmed by his partner Kirsty Shields, and they had their young child in the bush with them at the time. That was during the day, on a summer's day, in a bushland area where people could have been walking, and you've got Matthew Bruce firing an assault rifle in a public location. Our absolute priority is to locate that firearm. As luck would have it, Matthew Bruce moves that firearm and a number of firearms to a known associate by the name of Matthew Bentley.
Bruce obviously has no idea that Echo has infiltrated every part of his life and is all over his conversations. The only code he uses with Matthew Bentley is calling the weapon a guitar.
Can I bring my guitar back over in about an hour? Is your missus up? Because I want to drop the guitar off if that's all right. I'll be picking it up at 9 in the morning if that's all right, because I didn't end up going out today. I'll go out tomorrow.
But before Bruce can retrieve his guitar, Echo Taskforce swoop on Bentley's home and seize the assault rifle and other guns.
Shortly after that, Matthew Bruce drives past Bentley's house, sees the police out the front of the house, and immediately goes into panic mode.
Not surprisingly, Matthew Bentley isn't picking up his phone, so Bruce calls Jessica Shields, Kirsty's sister.
The cops are everywhere at my mate's house where all my shit is. They're out the front of his house and he's not answering his fucking phone.
Don't go there.
He's on the phone telling people that his stash of firearms has likely been taken. He drives past at one point in his Rebels colours, what we call soft colours, so not his vest, but a jumper or a T-shirt. He changes vehicles, he drives past again.
Justin Merkovich wants Bruce to think it's local police raiding the home, not the Echo Taskforce.
So anyone who dealt with Matthew Bruce previously was inside that house at the time. We knew that Matthew Bruce had dealt with myself and other members of the crew, and we didn't want him to see us there and then become aware that the Echo Taskforce were there for those firearms. He has other friends of his drive past that address. He's trying to convince himself that police don't know that the firearms are there or they're not his firearms.
Before you go home, you should go back past there.
Why?
I don't know, see if they're actually going in his house or if they're just out the front.
He looks at the police members out the front and convinces himself that it's not the Echo Taskforce because he didn't recognise us. It's important because at that point, we still wanted to continue the investigation. There were so many vital pieces of the puzzle that we hadn't put together. Who was the buyer of the firearm? What was going to happen with the firearms? We'd mitigated the risk because we'd taken those firearms out of play. Matthew Bruce couldn't hurt anyone with those firearms because we now had carriage and control of the firearms.
Now Bruce worries that his friend Matthew Bentley will give him up to police as the owner of the firearms.
If he talks, I'm fucked.
You're not going to get arrested. Your prints are on nothing. Did you wipe down that other one?
Nothing's wiped down. My prints are on everything.
Babe, stop stressing.
It's a lot of fucking money. I'm going to end up selling the car if I have to.
Later, Bruce bemoaned his fate in calls with other associates. He had built his identity on being feared. Now he was the one who was afraid.
I lost everything today, bro. My stash place got done. I lost my machine gun. I lost everything. I lost 40k worth of shit, bro. Uzis, handguns, fucking machine guns. I just hope the sticks fat and doesn't drop my name. If they fingerprint him, my prints are on them anyways. He's looking at 20 years, I'm telling you. A full automatic is a terrorism charge. He got done today over drugs. He got caught with about 100 grand worth of hardware. I mean full power tools. Yeah, you know, automatic shit.
Bruce has lost a lot of money with the 4 firearms seized, and the admissions he's making on the phone are damning. But he doesn't break stride. The very same day as the raid, he's organising an insurance fraud with his partner Kirsty.
Do you know anyone who can do an insurance job on this car ASAP?
Why?
Because me temperature gauge is fucking hot as fuck. Me car's fucked.
I'm going to have to get a 4-wheel drive, but don't talk about it on the phone. They're going to want phone records.
So on the 10th of February 2019, Matthew Bruce commenced organising or attempting to organise an insurance fraud on a motor vehicle. It was all about getting a payout from the insurance company in relation to a car. And once again, he didn't do it himself. He outsourced every part of it. And all those conversations were recorded as Matthew Bruce was tasking people, giving them very clear instructions on how to conduct this insurance fraud, which involved crashing a car in a street and the occupant driver driving off and leave it there, and then a claim being made to the insurance company for the car being written off. A couple of failed attempts, or at least one failed attempt at committing the insurance fraud before it went ahead.
The Echo Taskforce even made sure to get hold of the audio of Kirsty phoning 000 after the crash she had asked him to organise.
Emergency services. 736445. Thanks, Telstra. Hello, what address do you need the police to attend? Weir View or Melton South. Yeah, what's happening there? I'm not sure exactly what's happened. Like, I've just woken up and there is a car running in the middle of the street which has hit my car.
Oh,
The
okay.
car's still there and no one's in it.
All right. So it's one vehicle into your parked car. Is that correct?
Yes.
That car was involved in a collision and the claim was made. Obviously, we were well aware of that. And then at the conclusion of the investigation, he was charged with that. But obviously the insurance company was made aware that this was an entirely fraudulent claim and he never received a payout in relation to it.
Matthew Bruce wasn't finished yet. Little more than 2 weeks later, he's behind an arson attack in Melton on behalf of an associate in prison.
I'm getting it done. I'm going to have a barbecue tonight.
Matthew Bruce organises for an arson to occur on an associate's house. That was a direct act of fear and intimidation against the parents, not even the person involved, the parents of someone that an associate had been having a dispute with.
An associate pours petrol on 2 cars outside the house and destroys the vehicles. At the same time, Bruce is organising a drive-by shooting.
On the 16th of February 2019, Matthew Bruce arranges a drive-by shooting at an address of an associate in Melton. Again, he tasks 2 people, 2 offenders who are not members of the rebels, to shoot it up using an Adler shotgun that Matthew Bruce had access to. And they commit that offence, and luckily the occupant of that house is uninjured during that shooting.
The Echo Taskforce now knows that Bruce has more guns, and they go after this second cache of weapons.
The firearms were then stored at a rural property in a horse float. So his partner, Kirsty, was heavily involved in horses, and they had a number of horses. They used that horse float as a storage location for their firearms after Matthew Bentley was arrested. Again, they believed that location to be a safe location. On the 17th of February 2019, Matthew Bruce is involved in a series of incidents in the Melton area. He commits what we believe to be an aggravated burglary on an associate's address during the daytime, and upon committing that, he is assaulted by the occupants of that address, and he receives some facial injuries. Matthew Bruce immediately leaves that house, gets on the phone, and starts calling in support from associates of his within the outlaw motorcycle gang, and also his partner, because he was then on a mission to locate the people that assaulted him and seek revenge. Matthew Bruce makes a phone call to Kirsty Shields and gives her very clear directions to go and collect the Adler shotgun from the known location at the horse float. Kirsty then follows that instruction. She drives and she picks up the shotgun. That was only going to end, in our view, with someone being shot. So we had to disrupt that. That firearm had to be recovered. She could not be allowed to get that firearm to Matthew Bruce. As she's on the way to meet Matthew Bruce, she's pulled over by police. We have her intercepted. They conduct a search of the car. They find the shotgun in the car, and Kirsty is arrested. She rings him to say that she's just been pulled over, she's in custody, and police have the firearm. And Bruce's first reaction is to talk about himself. His first comment was along the lines of, "They'll never prove it was me." There's no concern for Kirsty. There's no concern for what he's tasked her to do, and that she's now been intercepted and arrested. It's about Matthew Bruce and what we can prove about his possession of that firearm. Matthew Bruce, he has no fear of anything that he discusses over the phone at any point. He genuinely believes that he's untouchable.
What Matthew Bruce doesn't know is that his freedom is about to end. After weeks of gathering evidence on all his crimes and connections, now is the perfect time for Justin and his colleagues to swoop.
So after Kirsty is arrested, Bruce continues. He's getting people together because he intends on going to seek revenge off these people who have assaulted him. Prior to doing that, he realises that he needs some medical treatment, and he seeks medical treatment from a nearby facility. They put him in an ambulance and convey him to Sunshine Hospital to undergo treatment. As the ambulance pulls up at the Sunshine Hospital, the rear doors open, and myself and my team from the Echo Taskforce are there to arrest Matthew Bruce. He's got his phone in his hand at the time. His phone is taken off him, and instantly, that's the exact same position he is held throughout this entire investigation. "You've got nothing on me." I'm sure there was a moment where Matthew Bruce realised that the Echo Taskforce were much better than he thought they were.
For someone who, months ago, was happy to talk with police, Bruce isn't so chatty in his police interview.
Matt, can you tell me what's happened this evening?
Yeah, I got to the hospital and got arrested.
Yeah, can you tell me what happened before that?
No comment.
I noticed you were wearing quite some injuries to the head area, and you were at hospital tonight when you got arrested. Can you tell me how those injuries happened?
No comment.
Okay. Your partner, Kirsty Shields, was arrested today in possession of an Adler shotgun. Can you tell me about that?
No comment.
Alright. Have you ever been involved in the trafficking of drugs as dependents?
No comment.
Alright.
And it wasn't just Bruce who had to answer for his crimes.
Kirsty Shields was remanded in custody. Kirsty's sister Jessica was remanded in custody. His sister was arrested and charged. All his associates, those responsible for the drive-by shooting, were arrested, charged and remanded. Those responsible for the arson were arrested and charged. Every little detail that we could was followed up. He was charged with the arson, the shootings, the firearms trafficking. He was charged in relation to the attempted to obtain financial advantage from the insurance company through the insurance fraud. And the brief of evidence that was put together was damning. And it really covered how he ran his syndicate, that nothing was off limits. Bruce appears before the County Court of Victoria, and he is sentenced on the 20th and the 21st of August 2020. His Honour Judge Stewart submitted a detailed finding in relation to Matthew Bruce and what his penalty was. And in it, the judge clearly breaks down the penalties for the individual offending, but then considers the overall impact that Bruce's offending has had. He's sentenced to 21 years and 6 months imprisonment with 15 years non-parole period, which at the time was the single largest term of imprisonment for an outlaw motorcycle gang member in Victoria, where there was no charge of murder. The team that I was so privileged to lead at the Echo Taskforce were an incredible group of detectives, amazing at what they did, incredibly dedicated, who sacrificed a significant amount of their own time and their family's time to bring Matthew Bruce to justice. There are so many people behind the scenes that don't get credit for it, so many specialist units, so many people that work behind that are involved in this sentence, and knowing that Matthew Bruce can't harm anyone for at least 15 years is a significant outcome. Not everyone is going to be the person who signs the charges and goes to court and is the informant, but there are so many roles behind that, so many minor jobs that appear minor at the time to progress an investigation that are just so valuable. The whole operation will fall down if you don't have someone doing that individual task.
Operation Polar stopped Matthew Bruce in his tracks, but it also weakened the Rebels gang and took some senior office bearers out of circulation. A number of matters were solved, including the drive-by shooting on Fink's bikie Brent Recker. The Echo Taskforce discovered Bruce was responsible for the attack. Recker died in jail in December 2019, but the prosecution still went ahead.
We were able to gather significant evidence in support of the prosecution for the drive-by shooting at Brent Recker's house. And some months after he was charged, a further brief of evidence was served on him and he was charged with the drive-by shooting at Brent Recker's house, which was a significant result. You've got high-powered rifle, the same type of firearm but not the same firearm that was involved that we seized. So both of those were SKS assault rifles, which again, you've got a person in possession of 2 assault rifles, has now been charged with the drive-by shooting. Whilst not all the parties involved in that drive-by shooting have been charged or identified, there is some justice in that one of the main perpetrators, one of the main leaders, a sergeant-at-arms of an outlaw motorcycle gang, is in prison and has been held to account for that incident. One of the missions of the investigation was always to identify further avenues of inquiry to disrupt the Rebels outlaw motorcycle gang. At the same time that this was occurring, that Matthew Bruce was running rampant through the western suburbs of Melbourne, the second sergeant-at-arms at the Melbourne chapter of the Rebels outlaw motorcycle gang was being investigated by my crew for serious extortion, blackmail and violent crimes. He too was charged and remanded in custody. All of this occurred at a time when the Rebels were trying to significantly expand their footprint in Victoria. They were trying to recruit more members and trying to get back to a position they had been in previously as a really strong club in Victoria. To do so, a man by the name of Ray Elise, who was originally from New Zealand, had moved to New South Wales. He was brought in to Victoria to take over as the state president of the Rebels outlaw motorcycle gang. With his arrival, we saw significant increases in recruitment, increases in the public profile of the club. Using all the information that we have at our disposal, we were able to make an application to the federal government to have Ray Elise's visa cancelled. He was a risk to the Victorian community.
In 2020, Ray Elise was deported back to his native New Zealand, where he has continued his gang affiliations.
These types of investigations are consuming because you're so heavily invested in it. You're invested in success for the investigation. You're invested in your members, making sure that they're all looked after. It's exhausting, it's tiring, but it's worth it. Because at the end of the day, Matthew Bruce was doing what he wanted. and everyone was too scared to say anything about it. These are career jobs. These are the type of jobs that, I still catch up with members that were involved in this job, and we still talk about this because we did something amazing here. We took a violent person, we took him off the streets, we had a significant impact on the Rebels Outlaw motorcycle gang.
This is just one operation of many since Echo was created in 2011. Detective Senior Sergeant Ashley Ryan believes Echo has made a real impact on the outlaw gangs.
For me, it's the members, how committed they are to ensuring that the safety of our community is paramount, and they really will stop at nothing to ensure that that safety is maintained, and their devotion and their dedication to ensuring that investigations are conducted to the highest level to ensure that these members, when they're committing serious crimes, they're held to account for them. So for me, I really take a significant satisfaction out of that we're able to have that impact on these crimes that really ensures that our community are safe, and will continue to do that into the future.
Justin Merkovich has left the Echo Taskforce, and his current role involves tackling youth gangs that are becoming involved in serious crime. It's been a natural progression for him.
After I left the Echo Taskforce, I spent 2.5 years at the Critical Incident Response Team, which was a complete step away from investigative work, but I had transferable skills. So skills from managing, a high-risk RMCG person running around with a firearm to managing a siege situation or an armed offender are very similar. And now I've taken them to my current role where we see youth gangs causing significant issues in our community. The blueprint is the same for a youth gang and an motorcycle gang. There's a hierarchy, there's people calling the shots, there's recruitment, and they're selling a message to those that they're recruiting about how good that life is. But the reality is it's not. Matthew Bruce, his criminal history prior to being arrested wasn't significant. So he's made a significant jump. He's gone from someone who's had some involvement with police to extreme high level of offending, probably unnoticed or just hasn't been caught. So there's that big gap, and that's what we're seeing with youth offenders today. When I first joined Victoria Police, my first interaction with a youth crime would be probably the theft of a chocolate bar at a supermarket, a caution, and you wouldn't see them again. Now that we know that their offending is very significant from a younger age, and they've been taught and they've been educated, and they can see the profit motivation. And we also know that organised crime groups are preying on that, and they're targeting those youths. So it's really important that we disrupt the offending and get into these kids as early as possible so that they don't take the path of Matthew Bruce.
Police Life, the experts, will be taking a short break over Christmas and returning for the second half of Season 2 on January 14. Stay tuned now for a sneak peek of our next episode, where we talk to tactical operators from one of Australia's most secretive police units, the Special Operations Group.
I suppose one particular one that comes to mind in a kidnapping and a hostage-taking job was a few years ago now, where a guy was holding a knife to a male friend, and he was off his face on drugs, and he was very aggressive. And the senior sergeant spoke to the team leader and said that we're getting information from a mate of his who's getting texts from the victim who's inside saying that he's in this room and he's half got the window open and he reckons he can jump out the window. So the senior sergeant said, have you got a plan to maybe assist with that? And I said, look, I'm pretty happy. I'll crawl down the side of the house and get underneath the window, and we'll set it up so we've got members on the other side of the fence opposite the window, which was down the side of the house. So I crawled out and I got under the window. The window was ajar, but it was a sliding window. It was ajar, but it wasn't wide enough for someone to get out of. So I'm texting the senior sergeant to say he needs to make it wider before he gets out of it, if he can, otherwise he'll get caught up. He's getting back to me saying he can't do anything at the moment. Can you help him with that? So it was a lot of texting to and fro. We're doing this for probably an hour and a half, because we only had the one chance. If he didn't get out the window or got hung up, there's a chance he could have got stabbed. In the end, we had it so that I was under the window. We had guys set up. One of them was giving me obs through the fence to say what was going on. And we had a plan to say, as soon as that window is pushed ajar, stand up, grab him, pull him through as he's climbing out, fall to the ground, and they'll impact the crook if he's moving forward to do anything.
Episode 5, Inside the Special Operations Group, is out on January 14. Police Life, the experts, is a Victoria Police production. Your host is Belinda Batty. This episode was written by Adam Shand. Additional writing and research by Jessie Ray McCann. It was produced by Adam Shand and Jesse Ray McCann. The senior producer was Roz Jaguar. Voice acting in this episode by Jesse Ray McCann, Erin Mitchell, Luke Weston, Sarah Vannon and Cass Stangy. Audio production and original music by Matt Dwyer. Theme song by Vyacheslav Dragunov. Executive produced by Beck Angel. This podcast was created by the Media, Communications and Engagement Department at Victoria Police. To learn more about the work of Victoria Police, go to police.vic.gov.au.